August 19th, regular meeting of the Urban Renewal Commission is called to order. Please take the roll.
Doug Neely, Urban Renewal Commissioner.
Did I get ahead of me?
Must be going this way.
I'm sorry.
I don't.
Go ahead.
Okay. Commissioner Norris,
Here.
Commissioner Neely,
Here.
Commissioner Nacita,
Present.
Commissioner West, Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Crocker,
Here.
Commissioner Peterson, Commissioner Shaw,
Here.
Commissioner Walters, here, Chair Slack.
Here. And could we go around the room and introduce ourselves, please?
I'm Larry Patterson, City Manager.
Nancy Crusher, Public Works Director, City Engineer.
Riley Hayes, Outback Structures. Dan Fowler. Dave Porter, Michael Service Department.
Terry Bankhead, City of Oregon City. Tracy Lucas, City of Oregon. Patty Brown, Black Conservative Partners.
Matt Graham, Oregon City News. William Becker. Lloyd Purdy, Downtown Oregon City. Colin Meyer, the Oregon. David Weber, Finance Director.
Scott Archer, Oregon City Community Services Director.
Nancy Ide, City Recorder.
Welcome all. Thank you. We have any citizens' comments this evening? Future agenda items or adoption of the agenda for tonight? I know that Commissioner Nacita.
Two things, Chair Slack. One is we received an email from the city manager that indicated that the Cove Disposition and Development Agreement was being withdrawn from tonight's agenda. I would like to propose that we retain the agenda item, namely to discuss the memo that is a follow-up from our discussion of
Oh, fine. We were going to discuss that. I know that
Okay.
Commissioner Neely had spoken to me
Okay.
earlier. So.
And also, I'd like to propose an addition to the agenda item, because I would like us to have a discussion regarding the URC commitment that had been made for the Rivers Mall, because that funding was to pay for the jug handle specifically, and the stimulus money is now paying for that jug handle project. And we've really not had a discussion on how that impacts the urban renewal, funding plan and financing, and what we're doing as a result of that. And that's been several weeks now, and I'd like to feel we're out on what I'll pilot.
Are we going to have our meeting next week for the DDA or on the Cove?
Be the meeting of the 3rd.
Of
Or
the
second,
3rd.
whatever that, yeah.
Whatever
second.
that. Would it be appropriate to put that on the agenda for that date? The
Let's
rivers.
do that. I mean,
So
since
that
the
we can-
rivers
we
are
can
out
have
before,
preparation.
some way before, I think we could do it to the next meeting. But,
Okay.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I think we need to have that discussion.
Mr. Patterson, do you understand the issue that he's raised? Okay.
Yes.
And we'll put that on that next agenda? Is that enough time to? Well, we're going to have a busy agenda, but let's. It shouldn't take that long, I wouldn't think, or will it?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
I can do that.
Anything else as far as rearranging our agenda or the future agenda items? We'll let Mr. Neely talk about. It's actually we're calling it the task force on habitat.
No, that's not why I asked for it.
Okay.
But what he's suggesting, but it's really kind of a separate item.
Okay.
What I wanted to do, since we got this, and since I went through it before it got withdrawn, there's a few questions that I want to pose, not for major discussion purposes, but to give the Attorney Janik and the Larry Patterson a chance to address the issues when this comes forward to us. And perhaps there's some things that might affect what's done in the rewriting of this thing, too.
Okay.
If you got the packet with you, I don't know if you brought it on page 13. Oh, no, that's not the one I wanted to draw out.
Chair.
Commissioner Norris.
If I might interrupt, did anyone bring that? 'Cause
I didn't.
majority does not have that.
Would it be
Is
appropriate
possi-
just to, in writing,
Right,
submit
send
those
that-
to
send that in
Mr.
as
Patterson?
questions With CCing to all of us.
Well, yeah, I could do
Be
that.
helpful.
It'll only take about 3 minutes, though.
I kind of crossed that off the list
Okay.
in my
I don't
mind
think that's
when I heard that we weren't going to be discussing it
Well, I'm not
tonight.
sure why
Is-
it's not appropriate, but that's all right.
Because we didn't bring our materials.
Commissioner Nocita.
Yeah, I don't mind discussing it, frankly. I had actually something regarding the whole process with the Cove DDA approval also that I think is appropriate to bring up now, since we're not going to be dealing with the agreement until the next meeting, and that is the question of a staff report. When we considered this in January, we had a full staff report from Dave Leland's office discussing the financials and the economic analysis. This is a changed project. There's no longer a medical facility. It's now going to be apartments. There are other changes, including the development of an office building between the condominiums. And I just think to make a judicious decision on this, I think we need to have information on what the economics of this project in its new incarnation is going to be. And
I think that's a point well taken. Let's put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Is that doable?
And again, we would have been prepared for that this evening, but we pulled it off the agenda, so I don't have that.
For the same report? Okay. Anything else, Mr. Nocita?
yes, I actually did want to propose, in follow-up of my raising of the guidelines at the last meeting, that this staff report include written findings by Mr. Stastny, analyzing the project against the design guidelines that are in the 2006 report. I think that would be very helpful for this commission. An analysis and recommendations.
How does everybody feel about that? Commissioner Norris.
I guess I'd like a staff response on that, because what is that going to entail in time, money, and where we are in the process? I don't think I have an understanding of that.
Well, definitely, it's going to take some time, Mr. Stasny, to do that. First, he'd have to consent to wish to do that. That's a little bit, maybe not what his bailiwick is, of being a planner reviewing development projects. I'm sure for a fee, he'd be willing to do that, and I just have to ask him and see what that quote would be. So that's really up to you, whether you want to spend that money to do it.
I'm looking at
Why
actually.
don't we leave it at getting the quote and then making a decision once we have the numbers on the quote?
At this point in time, we're ready to make a decision on the DDA. So does that mean delaying the decision on the DDA at the next meeting? I'm not in favor of that. I don't know about what the other commissioners think.
Yeah.
Commissioner.
I would like all of the discussion items to come forward at once so that we can prioritize according to what the resources are that are available and what our consensus discussion is going to determine are the most salient issues. I think I've got a few questions I need to do more research on, and I do appreciate that extra time to do the work.
And it would be good if we had all of those questions in advance, give us time to prepare for that and try to address the concerns that each commissioner has. I feel that we, again, and I don't think anyone is afraid of answering questions on this, but it seems like we're running around the bush again, trying to determine reasons to find a way to say no. And, if that's the direction where the commission wants to go, we can go that direction. So it's really
I'd
where
like
we
to
want do.
respond if that comment was directed to me. That's not my intention.
How do any of the other commissioners feel? I mean, we've been working on this for months and months. We're getting down to a decision point. I'm feeling like if we can get information before we make that decision, fine. But if this is going to hold up the opportunity to make a decision, I'm not real comfortable with that. Does anybody else have any input?
If I may, the disposition and development agreement that's before us, if I'm reading it correctly, I presume the the reds and the blues are effectively edits
Correct.
from the previous one.
Yeah.
We've really seen this before. When it comes down to design aspects and so forth, we'll have the opportunity to see that, I think, many times probably before that comes through the process.
That's correct, and also this is going back to the Planning Commission. I mean, part of it, too, is really where the commission wishes to go, because if we still have questions about the project, what it looks like, is it really the type of development you want, those sorts of things, we need to resolve those before we even take up the development agreement. Because to do the development agreement and then determine it's a project that we don't like, because once you make that commitment, there is a commitment, and if you back up on it, that has some pretty serious implications doing that. So we really need to, if there's other issues that need to be resolved, we need to resolve those now, besides the things that Commissioner Neely's talking about, because again, you're approving a development agreement. As development goes through, it still has to go through all the permit approvals that any other development project has to in terms of getting that. There's still some work that has to go through the Planning Commission and all that. So if the commission itself, though, is uncertain about the project, we need to try to resolve those questions before we really even get into the development agreement.
Commissioner Walters?
Would it be helpful for me to, would it be helpful for me to give you my primary questions? I've got 3.
Sure.
Do you want them now?
No, actually, if you could do that via email, it would probably be
Okay.
very helpful. That way I can kind of collect everything, and we can be prepared to address those questions at the next meeting.
Commissioner Crocker?
Just a quick, brief comment on weighing the new development agreement versus the 2006 plan. I think as long as everybody's on board with that plan, we haven't really determined that if the commission is on board with that plan. From what I've read, and I haven't gone over it line item, probably like some of us have, I'm all for it, but I think we need to get, before we all say, how does this weigh versus the plan, I think we all need to agree that that plan is a good plan for us all to go. So I don't know that I'd necessarily want a full-on report, but maybe just a memo as to how, maybe a brief report. I don't think we need to spend 10 grand on for some guy to say, yeah, this still fits in with that plan that was written 2 years ago. But I think there's some additional stuff that we probably need to determine long range if that's the plan that we want to follow.
I can also have our planning staff take a look at that, and again, without in short notice, they can't go through it in as great a detail as they would in lots of cases, but they can, I think, give you kind of a.
I'm a
feel
little
how that
bit.
stacks up.
I'm a little bit confused here because it seems like we're talking about two different things, unless I'm mistaken. One is how the economics of the change line up with with what we had before.
The economics, actually, we're prepared to talk about that. We can do that.
Okay.
I think the thing what I've heard Commissioner Nocita talk about is, in looking at the futures report, kind of the guidelines in there
Right.
for development is how does this particular development stack up against those guidelines.
Is that what you were talking about as well, or were you
Yeah.
talking about the economic element?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I misunderstood then. Okay, are we ready to move forward? Okay. Anybody else have anything? Commissioner Smith?
No.
Okay. Item 4A, disposition and development agreement with Pacific Property Search for, I'm sorry. That's the one that's off the table tonight. And then we get right into this, or I get right into this order here. 4B, resolution number UR0903, Amtrak Station, phases 1B and 2.
Chair Slack.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we were going to talk about this in that first
Oh, yeah,
agenda item
that's right.
since it relates to.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well,
And this, by the way,
Actually-
this is the,
I'm going to defer to Jim on this.
Okay.
Although we worked on this together, he actually typed it. I just made some additions on it, and more explanatory than anything else. But I will.
explain to the audience what we're talking about here.
There have been the issue came up because we've
At the last meeting.
At the last meeting, because we filed for a permit to move gravel out of the gravel bar, and there was discussion how that gravel should be used. It was suggested that that material could be perhaps brought into the cove and to enhance certain environmental quality aspects of it. However, that permitting process is underway, and we don't want to do anything to delay that dredging. I'm not sure it's even going to occur this year because of the water, the in-river water period is almost.
Well, it isn't just the delaying the dredging, it's interrupting a permit that took 2 years to get. So-
Yeah, that's true. And so both Commissioner Nacita and myself expressed interest, however, in exploring environmental enhancement of the Cove area. And so everybody says, well, go ahead and put forward a proposal for putting together a task force, which is what Jim and I did. The one thing I'll introduce at this point, and you'll see it in the document, is that, and part of this came from discussions I had with Richard Craven, who is a fish and wildlife and habitat person who actually had tremendous input in terms of the permitting process. His concern was not to focus merely on the Cove, but to look at the lower Clackamas River, what could be done in terms of a long-term enhancement of the overall situation. You don't want to be in a situation where we have this issue and we don't resolve the major issue. Various concerns, if the gravels moved into the Willamette River and so forth, that is kind of an issue for us because we've gone through this process with the Corps of Engineers to rebuild those locks and to have navigation of the Willamette River, and the bars extending into the navigable part of the Willamette River. And so the general impact of these things on both the river, the Clackamas River, the Cove, and also the Willamette River are things that we think ought to be addressed in this. For this reason, and I think we'll let this body maybe make the major decision, but we thought that it might be better to have this task force under the auspices of the City Commission because it's extending beyond the specific boundary of the Urban Renewal Agency. And perhaps that's one of the major things you'd want to discuss at this particular time about it. We don't expect any decisions at this meeting, but you've
Well, in
got
fact,
the,
let's
you've got
not,
the draft.
I'm thinking it's best to put this on the agenda for the next meeting so that the public has an opportunity to see what we're talking
Yep.
about and prepare. We all have a chance to prepare and then make whatever.
We weren't intending any action to be taken. I don't
Commissioner
believe.
Norris?
May I just ask, though, that I'm unclear of the purpose. Could there be a purpose statement? And I'm also unclear about what the goal is. So if that could be firmed up for the next,
Well, we can do that.
I think that would be great, because it's unclear to me.
Okay. So, Commissioner Nacita, did you have something to add?
No, I think Commissioner Neely summarized it well.
Okay. So we're going to put this on the next agenda.
Well, let me be clear, because as I read what this discussion is, and as point out, this is a broader discussion
Yes.
beyond the code development. This may be more appropriate for the City Commission agenda versus the urban renewal.
And I agree with what from what I've heard what you're saying. I thought, though, that rather than for us to try to make a decision, since we haven't noticed this, for us to, at the next meeting, have the discussion, have the information, and I'm assuming make the decision to pass it on to the City Commission. Mr. Nacita, were you going to say something?
Getting to what the city manager, Mr. Patterson, just mentioned, and what Commissioner Neely mentioned, I'm wondering if there's one essential fact here that I think probably we can base a decision in this organization on tonight, which is because it's envisioned now to go beyond land owned by the Urban Renewal Agency. We can decide here that this is not in our purview, and then just leave it to the City Commission. And
The only thing that I'm
Commissioner
uncomfortable,
Norris-
we don't have it on the agenda.
No,
That-
we
I think
we can
it's-
make that decision next time. I don't. think
Yeah,
it's-
I think it should be on the agenda for
All right.
public input, so.
okay, that's fine.
That's-
Just one comment, and I think we make it clear in here. This in no way is designed to affect the current issue of the development on the Cove. This is a broader term issue. Like I said, it's not intended to affect the permitting issue in terms of the current gravel bar. But it's
Yeah,
a
well,
longer view of what we want to see.
From what I understood, it was maybe even to be looking for potential sources of
That's true.
that are out there that could assist in doing
Yes.
the long-term solution.
Right,
So, yeah.
including financial resources.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're done here. Can I now move forward to the next agenda item? Resolution number UR09-03. This is 4B. Amtrak Station Phases 1B and 2. Depot relocation and parking lot. Exemption from public bidding requirements. Ms. Crushhour?
Yes, good evening, Chair Slack and Urban Renewal Commissioners. I might ask that you perhaps consider the two next two agenda items kind of together, to discuss them together, because they're kind of dependent on one another. Depending on the outcome of either one, it could affect how these are discussed and so forth.
That would be 4B and 4C.
Yes. Okay, so I'd like to just start off with a little background, and then I think we've talked about this project now for several meetings. I'll go over the history again just for the record, and then talk a bit more detail about the agreements and the resolution that's before you tonight. This particular location, the Amtrak station site, was selected by the region, the Portland metro region, actually more even throughout the state, including Canby was involved in this study back in the late 1990s. And the whole idea was to be looking for another metro station other than Union Station in Portland that would serve Clackamas County and the South Metro area. And Oregon City was selected based on a fairly comprehensive process back then, and the date of the report was February 2000. And I might add that Milwaukee was also considered other than Canby and Oregon City. Then throughout the 90s, the site that the current platform is on was purchased by, and David Wimmer, it was purchased back right before I got here, but it was Urban Renewal dollars, I believe, for the Stimson site. It was purchased in two phases. One had a fairly significant DEQ cleanup for the groundwater because there had been wood treatment processes at the site for a number of years previous to that. And pentachlorophenol was in the groundwater, and until we received no further action from the Department of Environmental Quality, the final acquisition of that site was not completed. And it was completed when we got that no further action. In 2004, we used Urban Renewal funds to build the first phase of the project, which was the station entryway, a very small parking area, and the platform itself so that trains could start stopping. Then we felt at that point that we really should seek some regional funds to complete the second phase, or what we were then calling 1A and 1B and 2, phase 2, which included moving the historic Southern Pacific Railroad freight depot to the site and building a parking lot, the larger parking lot. And we were successful after several attempts to obtain Metro flexible funding, which is actually federal funding, for the Phase 2 work in 2004. And that was programmed then for 2007 through 2009. So we are being looked at to complete the project at this point. At that point, too, it was part of getting the funding was the local match was made up of Urban Renewal funds. That's part of our agreement with Metro. And as you all know, this historic Southern Pacific Railroad site used to be, well, you may not know this, but it used to be down by 16th Street, closer to the new bridge. And then it was moved to Portland, and then it was moved back by Dan Fowler at the time. It was moved back to Oregon City as probably part of considering the historic heritage of the community. And then since it's been returned, the inside has been fixed up and it's been leased to tenants pretty much continually for over a decade. So we now have $900,000 in federal funding for the project. We've budgeted another, I believe, $500,000 or $600,000. The total project cost of budgeted is $1.5 million to complete this Phase 2 work. And as you know, those, I'm not sure if Commissioner Peterson was here in March, but I think starting in March, then we started preparing for how are we going to complete this project? Because there are multiple parties involved. There's some significant development agreement involved, and there's also the acquisition of the depot, and there's what staff has felt was a prudent consolidation of some of the properties in that area to allow for future efficient development that would fit in our mixed-use downtown regional center area. And in March, we came to you and updated you on, reminded you of the history of the project. And at that time, we asked for direction to get an appraisal for the depot. We had already gotten an appraisal of the parcel that we'll talk about a little later that is an option agreement as part of the development agreement. And we also needed to finalize the Phase 2 construction plans for this particular construction project. We had a whole set of plans done up for the entire project back in 2004, but we needed to just clean them up to make sure they were clear that this wasn't no more any of the Phase 1 work. It was just strictly for the depot and the parking lot construction. At that time, we did get direction from the commission to proceed with the appraisal and to sign a small contract with David Evans and Associates to complete the set of construction documents we needed. In June, I came back to you with a report on the appraisal being complete, and at that time, I requested direction to continue preparing agreements for this depot acquisition, the disposition of the property, and also in a development agreement that would include construction contracting with F&F Structures to move the depot to the site and to build a parking lot. We talked about the efficiencies. We talked about the logistics of having somebody move the building that was very familiar with the building, who had moved it once before, in completing all the redone HVAC, that kind of a thing, and also in being similar contracting for the parking lot, logistics again of having one contractor on site, efficiencies, et cetera. So I won't belabor those points again. And then we got on the agenda a couple times since then. One time, it's been, the Urban Renewal Commission meetings have been very busy, very packed, and so now we're back here at this August meeting to present to you the final agreements. And also, back I think it was in either the March or the June meeting, we had also advised you that yes, indeed, this will take an exemption to the public contracting rules because we're not doing a typical public bidding procedure in terms of the city managing that. So we're back, and at this point, just to remind you, the project description is to acquire a 21,000 square foot depot building, move it to the Amtrak station site, and then to construct the parking lot and wrap that project up. So now going to our packets tonight. The development packet, which is agenda item 4C, includes one agreement with 4 exhibits, and the agreement talks about the acquisition of the depot, and it proposes a appraisal value. Well, it proposes an acquisition purchase value of $230,000, which was the appraised value of the building. And it also includes then the ground lease, so Exhibit A is the deed of dedication or transferring the property. Then Exhibit B is a ground lease, because it's kind of, these little details, you kind of need to make sure everything's taken care of. But once we acquire the depot and then start readying the adjacent site for its movement, it's not going to just go boom within the same time period. So it's probably going to sit there for, we're not sure how long, but a couple weeks, 8 weeks, whatever. So we need to have a ground lease in place for it to sit there for a while while we purchased it, but it hasn't been moved yet. And then there's a construction agreement, which for the most part follows the format of the city's basic construction agreement for any other public works projects. There's been a few minor adjustments made because this is a little different from if we're just putting it out on the street ourselves. And then Exhibit D is an option agreement, and that, I'll remind you, is the option to purchase what we call the GrowCo site, which sits right behind, well, it sits to the left of our Amtrak station and behind the welding property. And because the Historic Properties owns the existing historic depot site, the welding site, they would like to acquire the GrowCo site, which currently only has access through the Amtrak station, and consolidate those properties so they make a much more readily developable site for future regional center development. And let's see, that the construction agreement also includes examples of what we thought was important to hold us true to a competitive bidding process as we could with this sort of a unique situation, and that is that all subcontract items over $50,000 will be publicly bid, just like we would put a notice in the Daily Journal of Commerce. Make sure we get at least 3 bids and rebid it if we don't get 3 bids, and then staff and the developer, a partner, sit down and go through the bids, make sure they're all acceptable, and then put together the final construction cost from that. And then what we're asking tonight is for that package of the acquisition, disposition, and development agreement. We're asking for approval on that, and then we're asking for the authority for the executive director to execute the final construction contract documents. Understanding that there is a budget of $1.5 million on it, and there's no way we're not proposing that we would have anything in there that would exceed that limit. And we're hoping we'd come in below it. So, depending on some of those subcontracting bids. Then the other thing that we have is the resolution exempting the project from public contracting rules. And it's fairly self-explanatory. What we need to show is that we are trying to save money for the public, and that we haven't shown any favoritism for the particular person that is the contract, who gets the contract awarded. And we've found that we don't believe, at least staff in the city attorney's office doesn't believe, that there is any favoritism. We don't see where there's any special interests of anyone on the commission with F&F structures or historic properties. And we've tried to briefly state the reasons we've talked about for the why it makes sense for F&F structures to move the building, as I mentioned earlier, and also that the process we're going through with the bidding of the subcontract items greater than $50,000 really does lend itself to a fairly competitive process, and what it's difficult to estimate is how much are we really saving the public in doing so. And so I tried to make my best estimate based on experience with the subcontract contracting costs, contract management, mobilization, inconvenience of the site, basically the logistics of having two contractors, or having a contractor that really doesn't know much about the depot step in, and now he's working on somebody else's property, moving a building, gets pretty darn complicated. And I've made my best estimate of those cost savings to be about $35,000 to $40,000. So the next steps, as I mentioned earlier, we would ask the commission to have reviewed, hopefully you've had a chance to read the agreement and the resolution, and that you would approve both, and then we would move forward with advertising the bids, reviewing the bids, selecting the subcontractors, and then the whole process of closing and completing the construction contract as is described in the agreement itself. And Dan Fowler's here if you have any questions. If Dan wants to add anything to what I've already stated, why don't you come on up to the table, Mr. Fowler, and then certainly I'm available for questions.
Mr. Chair, may I make a request? It might make more sense to us talk about 4C first.
Everybody in agreement with that? Okay.
First question I have of you. Now, is the depot fully rented out at this point? D-Stop?
No, as a matter of fact, it isn't, and part of the reason it's not is because we haven't been able to reach a decision. And everyone that looks at it, I have to give them the truth, which is we're in the process of possibly moving it, and it really, we've had several tenants, I think, would have rented it had they had a little more certainty, one way or the other.
Well, this answers my question. The ground lease was a concern of mine. If you were actually getting revenue from there.
I've lost about
then-
$12,000 in the
Yeah,
last few
okay,
months.
and so I understand the concept of the ground lease, so.
And the ground lease is $1.
Okay, well, we, yeah.
What's your profit margin on
If I read this correctly, what we're looking at, if we pass agenda item 4C, is it covering both our purchase of the depot, and I think it is, and also the selling of the GrowCo site?
It's only covering an option to purchase the GrowCo site, and the option is good for 2 years. It's
Okay.
paying $5,000 for the option. And then the GrowCo site, I did neglect to mention that the proposed sale price on that is also its appraisal price, which I believe was $175,000.
That's what,
$175,000.
175?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, assuming that we could sell in 2 years the site and at that price and so forth, the difference between the selling of the GrowCo site and the purchase of the station must be $55,000, is that right? Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, Commissioner Walters.
Are you going to be providing the construction budget when it's available?
We can. What we wanted to be able to do is not hold up things too much. Anything is available, but we were hoping that you would authorize the executive director to go ahead and execute the construction documents.
Talking about down to Slack?
No, that would be Larry Patterson.
Oh, okay.
He has a different title for different entities.
Commissioner Smith?
I kind of personally would wish that the two deals were separated. I don't like them. I don't necessarily think they should be all part of the same thing. I think if we want to buy the building, we should buy the building, and I think if Historic Properties wants to buy the land, that they should, but that should be, I don't think it should be intertwined.
Any other questions?
If I might,
Commissioner
I'm going to
Neely.
let Mr. Fowler respond to that, because I remember him saying, we've got something you want, and
It's been a long process.
yeah. But is there anything that explicitly ties those two deals together? The sale of of the station to us, and the potential sale of the GrowCo site to you?
We've been operating really in good faith. We've made it clear since the city approached us, really our criteria was maybe really one or two things. One, we wanted to be treated fairly on price. Two, we wanted to make sure the tenants that we had sufficient notice and were treated fairly in any movement of the tenants. And three, that we would be and therefore we felt it was kind of important to stay involved with that process. And three, it made sense for us if we were giving up an income-producing property in the long term in terms of planning the area, that we would have an option on that GrowCo piece so that we could then have a better development of that site. So it was, in our minds, always a package. I don't think I'd be interested in giving up the depot if we weren't acquiring that property, or at least having the right to acquire it.
Well, it's kind of my understanding when we discussed this before that was the case. I mean, it was pretty clear that was your feeling at the beginning, and I would have no interest in torpedoing that personally, because I'll be frank, the only thing that's bothering me is not this deal at all. It's the long-term future of Amtrak. I mean, discussions going on in terms of a far more rapid system that's going to come from Salem to here, and what route is that going to take? On the other hand, my guess is putting that together is going to take time. I mean, you're not going to have, if it doesn't come through Oregon City, it's still going to take some time to figure out how it's going to get to Portland. If it's going to come on the west side of the metro area, I think it's going to be a very expensive undertaking. And so if that decision is ultimately made, my guess is we'll still have an Amtrak coming through here for some time to come. And that's just a guess.
I would agree with you, though, Commissioner Neely. I mean, based on all of those very, very major kinds of transportation decisions and funding decisions and availability, et cetera, I think would be a very long time.
How long did it take us to get Phase 1 of McLaughlin underway from the time it was conceived?
About
10 years?
10 or 12 years.
Yes.
And that was
That was relatively...
1990.
Did it even involve the state or the...
Well, it involved the state.
Well, it did involve the state.
Commissioner-
I take that back.
Commissioner Norris?
I will move that we adopt Agenda Item 4C, approve the acquisition, disposition, and development agreement for the depot and 1743 Washington Street, and authorize the executive director to execute the final documents.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. And any other discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Commissioner Smith?
No.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner Neely?
Yes.
Commissioner Norris?
Yes.
Commissioner Crocker?
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Walters?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Chair Slack?
Yes. That would be, what, 7 to 2?
Point
Commissioner Nocita.
Point of information, under the rules of this commission, is it necessary to have a majority of the city commission approve any agenda item?
I don't think so.
No, it's not.
Well, I think
just quorum
I think
only.
a quorum base,
Yeah.
I mean, we have to have a majority of both the citizens and the city commission here, but...
Two
that's
conventions.
Just for a quorum?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
for a quorum.
And then it's a simple
It doesn't
majority.
apply to the vote.
Okay, then we would take on item 4B. Commissioner Neely.
This one perhaps is a little bit more concern to me. I can understand the experience of the building and having and for having an exemption for the purpose of moving the facility and reestablishing the facility at another site. I don't know if the same, and I know F&F Structures or an affiliated group has been involved in parking lots before, too. I understand that, but whether those two specific needs are that closely tied together, and I could see maybe on staff time there'd be a savings, because the city would not be negotiating separate contracts for the parking lot piece versus the moving and reestablishing of the station. But I don't know if that is figuring into your cost savings or not.
It is indeed, the contracting costs, contract management. The other thing that is, it's to get those two phases done at the same time makes a lot of sense from how we use the site, because the access to the site, of course, we own the Clackamas Landscape Supply site as well, but we prefer not to disrupt them too much. So the access to the site is really through the driveway. And once we, sort of like, okay, we could do the park, we want to do the depot first because that's sort of the pending, that's the most timely need at this point, because it's, as Mr. Fowler mentioned, it's been going on for quite a while. And then to do that and then put in a parking lot and bring all the construction equipment back there, back and forth, is very, it's cumbersome at best. And then the other thing is, if you have two contractors side by side like that, it doesn't work very well, and especially in the very limited space we have, because it's not like we can sprawl and spread. So having it done chronologically, so you do phase one and then the other phase, it's going to take twice as long also, and that means we have a consultant out there twice as long. It will take more time than if you do them together. So the whole thing about timing, logistics, site movement, all speaks to me, from my experience, as being a really good idea to have it done by one contractor all at once.
We have a motion?
Yeah, can I make a comment?
Sure. Commissioner Crocker.
Seems to me if we were to do this, it would save the taxpayers money. Is that right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. What are, aside from what's in the report, I mean, what are the downsides? What are the negatives? Is it just perception from the public that we're not following standard protocol? I mean, what are the potential negatives?
I think that when we have passed a resolution of exemption, and that is what covers us legally. So there's always, you're right, the perception is something that can exist no matter what your project is and what parties are involved.
And that's the only potential negative?
That's the only potential negative I see.
Commissioner Walters.
I'm just curious how you're going to determine the consideration for just the portion that would be going to Mr. Fowler or F&F Con.
Well, that'll be part of the construction agreement, and that's something that we'll be reviewing. And we have a budget, just like we do with all projects. And what we agree to will have to be underneath that budget. Anything else you have to add?
I'd like to maybe just address a reason why these should be done together, that everything that you've said, Nancy, is correct, and this gets a little detailed, but this is the reality of building those two phases. And I'll just use the electrical as an example, but there's other things. But there's, on the parking lot, we have electrical circuitry that goes in for the parking lot lights. And on the depot, and the depot platform, we have electrical circuitry that goes in for the lights around that. If it's one contractor, we can do those together. There's 4 different tie-in points for those electricals that go from phase 1B and phase 2. So there's some real efficiencies there by having those type of things. That occurs also in landscaping, that occurs in paving, it occurs in site work, occurs in electrical, occurs in storm drainage, that same type of thing. So there is significant savings that I think overall the project will see if those two phases are done together. In terms of perception, I understand that. I totally understand that. I have lived under the perception almost my entire life in this city. I can tell you that we have spent already a lot of time value engineering this, working with the city, developing the plans. Getting to this point, we have taken a lot of that cost on ourselves and not asked for a dime for it. So We try to run things very honestly, very straightforward. We tried to develop a process that did work with the sole contractor, yes, and we think there's valid reasons why, but also upheld the spirit of the law, which would allow the public to be represented well in a process of open bidding. So it's a very, very, very complicated deal when you're buying a building that has tenants and moving it from private ownership to public ownership. So I'm prepared to accept those perception issues. I've done that a lot. I know in myself, in my heart, and in my business sense that we're ethical and honest in what we do.
Commissioner Smith.
Do I believe that the city should buy this building? Yes, I do. Do I believe that this building is an asset to the city? Yes, I do. Do I think that this building should sit on that platform in the future? Yes, I do. But perception is everything. And I know that this will pass tonight, and I'm excited about seeing that building there, but I won't support it.
Any other questions? Commissioner Crocker.
So the, I know we have our budget to do this, which is 1.5 million. That includes the purchase of the building. Is that correct?
That's right.
But in theory,
Includes everything.
because F&F Structures is getting competitive bids for all the sub stuff that they're doing, is their contract then going to be time and materials plus a contractor fee on top? Is that how it's going to work? So in theory, what if we don't spend that 1.5 million on this? What happens to that extra money?
Goes into your ending fund balance, and that's kind of helps your overall program.
It goes into our
Yep.
our fund balance.
If I just might clarify, if I'm correct, we actually use the federal portion of that money for McLaughlin Boulevard. So this is all coming out of urban renewal funds.
Right, but we changed, yeah.
No, I understand that. I mean, and I presume that meant some obligation on our part in terms of the procurement of the station. What would have happened if we didn't procure the station? Would there be any cost to us in terms of the federal monies that were actually allocated to McLaughlin?
Yes, we'd have to give back that amount.
So we would actually
Not
lose.
the McLaughlin Boulevard, but we'd have to give back the $900,000 that we switched.
That's what I mean. Exactly right. So we would have lost $900,000 in the overall process.
Yes.
Okay. I guess I thought I had a different question, but those things seem to fade with time quickly.
Commissioner Crocker.
So, I mean, in essence, the only thing we're afraid of is the perception from the public, and it seems from my small mind that aside from that, there's really nothing to fear if F&F Structures is going to be open about the bids, and they're going to be open about their markup. It seems like it makes good financial sense for us to do this, not only for urban renewal, but for the citizens of Oregon City. And I think we should be willing to go to the citizens and say, this made sense for us, and it makes sense for you, and we're looking out for your best interest. So I would like to move adoption of resolution number 0903, exempting the Amtrak Phase 2 project from public contracting rules relating to competitive bidding.
Second
Okay.
it.
And we have a motion and a second. We have discussion. Do we have the vote, please?
Commissioner Smith?
No.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner Neely?
Abstain.
Commissioner Norris?
Yes.
Commissioner Crocker?
Yes?
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Walters?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Chair Slack?
Yes. So that we watch my math here in front of everybody here. So that would be 6 for, 2 against, and 1 abstention. And the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I ask why Commissioner Neely abstained?
It
There was no indication that you...
it is something, if I were to talk about, it has nothing to do specifically with this project. It would be something I would talk to Dan Fowler about.
Okay. That's fair.
But it has nothing to do with this project.
Thank you very much.
Item 4D, Urban Renewal Storefront Improvement Program, 1009 and 1011 and 1015 7th Street grant. Ms. Krushauer.
Thank you, Chair Slack. I wanted to let you know that the representatives from each one of these grant applications are here tonight, so if you wanted to invite them up during the presentation, that would be great.
They also have everybody's status.
Yes, and Mr. Patterson's just mentioned that we did put at your place the status of the grant applications and the budget so that you have a sense of where we're at in spending. So the first one tonight is on 7th Street. You may all be familiar with these buildings. There is a series of 3 addresses, one of which is currently a single-family residential, and that is not part of the grant application. The other 2 are, they're asking for painting and some other storefront improvements. And I guess what would be nice is if you wanted to invite the property owner up here, they could tell you more about, probably do a better job of describing their project than I can. And there's one handout that they brought in tonight that gives you a vision of what they would do with the middle part, with the middle building in the future. But that's not part of the application tonight.
If you would introduce yourselves, please, and the city that you reside in.
Yes, Cammie James, and I live in Colton, Oregon.
Nicole Evans, Milwaukee.
Thank you.
A little background, we've owned this property now, this is our 5th year owning it, and it is definitely the ugly dog on the block. I see the electrical store next to us is just repainted and looks beautiful. And we're between that and, what's the name of is it the Midway?
Yeah.
The Midway Pub, Casey's Midway. And they repainted yellow, and it looks very nice. We would like to, Building 109 is a historical building, and that has 4 tenants in it right now. The one in the back, like they said, is single family, so we're not going to address that one. The 1015 currently has 3 tenants in it. We would like to take 1015 and convert that into commercial space eventually. Right now, we don't have the funding to do that. And we have 2 elderly tenants in it that have been long-term tenants going on 10 years, and we just don't feel morally right about kicking them out for our own interests at the moment. But ideally, what we would like to do is to turn that into the lower 2 units into one storefront area, and then above could be, yoga studios or some other sort of business. Not really interested in doing something that would have a kitchen. We just don't want to get into the whole fire. We've been talking to Christina, and she's been telling us, and we're just like, I think we'll just go with something antiques or flowers or something. We've drawn in flowers just because we like flowers. The reason we're asking for the grant right now, we don't have the money to go full swing into, for the reasons I stated, to go commercial yet. But the building itself, one, we'd like to bring the neighborhood up a little bit. Like I said, it really is awful looking. And also, we need to start worried about protecting the wood. And so when the time does come that we can actually put the money in to renew the building and convert it, we don't have a lot of dry rot issues, and which we're already finding as we've gone and kind of scraped. So we want to just do a little patching and make it look pretty for the next 5 years until we can save up the money, which we've been doing, to go full swing into our newest venture. Thank you.
Do we have any questions?
You know, it's a great...
Commissioner Neely?
When we have a program that has proven successful, and you got more and more people that are coming in and really transforming this area in a very positive way. I wish we could have actually committed more money to this project, because we use all this budgeted item every year, and it's clearly going to happen this year, I think. We're very early into the fiscal year, and yet we're getting these requests right away. but I'm so pleased we're seeing these kinds of proposals coming forward. We went through a long time, and I think a lot of those property owners have kind of disappeared, where we've had, I'll call you an absentee property owner, simply because you don't live in Oregon City, who really weren't making that investment, and there's just been this tremendous turnaround, and I couldn't be more pleased.
Commissioner Smith.
I will agree with that. These buildings are actually pretty amazing. I drive by them every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And so I think this is exactly what this storefront improvement program is supposed to do, and I appreciate the fact that we were following our own criteria and removing the single-family component of it. So I think this is great.
Commissioner Shaw.
This is for Nancy. Nancy, how far up 7th does our district boundary up?
J.Q. Adams.
Okay.
Any other questions? Commissioner Nocita.
Yeah, I'd like a clarification from Ms. Koshar regarding the removal of, you said 1011 is being removed from the application?
What this applies to is 1009 and 1015 7th Street.
Okay.
I got a little confused on the middle building there.
Yeah, I think I added the middle building in my grant, not realizing, one, it's not street front, and also it is single family, so it's exempt from this.
Okay. I guess the further clarification I would request then, since the estimates are for all three buildings?
Correct. We were going to get amendments on that. To just have the two, but we didn't get
Okay.
those.
So I guess I'm unclear on how to approve this when we don't have the cost estimate for just the two buildings that are part of the application.
Commissioner, Ms. Koshar.
What I would suggest is have them work with staff. We'll review their cost estimates, make sure they've taken out the part that doesn't apply to the 1009 and 1015, and adjust the grant amount accordingly.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Consequently, we don't know how much we're granting.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
I hate to
We'll
put
take
you
$1
off.
million.
And
No.
I understand that, but I really have a problem, particularly when we're dealing out of a grant program, not having before us the amount. I would prefer to defer this to the next urban renewal meeting, without a specific number in there.
Is the specific number in this package somewhere in?
It is. The bid that we
Okay.
want.
Is the bid for the 1011 in here, and we can just make
Yes.
a calculation right now on that?
Exactly. Yes, we could.
Okay.
The bid for the paint is the lowest bid, is
Could I make a suggestion?
Yes.
That we take the other two first, let you go ahead and make those calculations, and then come back for it?
well, I could third it and tell you what it would be.
But it wouldn't be
Oh,
a
it's
third
the
because
smaller.
it's the smallest building there.
Yeah,
It
so,
would be less than a third.
yeah, so, yeah, I mean, it'd be just waiting, you sitting out for maybe 5 minutes while you look at a couple of these others and bring them back in?
We could do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we can call the.
Is that okay with everybody? Okay, let's go on to urban, this would be 4E, agenda item 4E, Urban Renewal Storefront Improvement Program, 616 Main Street, Munoz Bakery. Ms. Koshar?
Skip that one, you just walked out.
4F.
That's all right. So we go to the next one.
Let's go to the next one. And we're going to give all the money to the last guy here, so no. This is item 4F, Urban Renewal Storefront Improvement Program, 1625 Washington Street, the old Kruger's Lumber. Ms. Koshar.
Thank you, Chair Slack. This
Is
one,
the applicant, you will come forward, please? Hold your seat, so.
this is a application for working on a portion of the old Kruger lumber building, and it would be putting some glazed up garage doors on some of those existing window fronts, And there are some fairly good illustrations I'm fairly certain you saw in your packet. There's the illustrations on page 5 and 6, and then there's the architectural drawing on page 10 that best describes it. And so basically it's facade improvements, and the planning department didn't necessarily oppose this, but they did suggest that it could be better sequencing to have a master plan done for the building first, to make sure that whatever they were doing now would fit in with future development at the site. But that really isn't, it's information for you to consider in your decision. And then, would you like to add anything?
No, and that basically sums it up. We're just, I know I'm sure a lot of you go past that building all the time, but there's currently a huge opening in the facade that's just open to the elements. There's currently a tenant in there that moved in recently, and he has no protection, basically. There's a sliding gate that keeps everyone from his space. And so the owner is, it's kind of his priority to get them some kind of enclosure first, but he sees this as phase one in a series of future facade improvements. 'Cause, quite honestly, that facade isn't in the best shape right now, but he would really like to turn it into something amazing, something that really creates a nice gateway right there, and so he just sees this as kind of the first step.
And would you identify yourself? Did you?
Sorry, I'm Tracy Orvis. I work for Di Loretto Architecture.
Okay, thank you. Do we have questions?
I do.
Commissioner Neely.
I'm not quite tying everything together, so I'll go to the picture, and I am familiar, like many of us, we used to buy all our hardware down there and lumber down there and so forth. You've got the, I would say, the basic structure of the building is where we would go in and get our hardware, and then you had an extension there that was, a lot of it just added on with corrugated metal and so on.
Right.
The facade, if you look at the photograph, I don't know if you got that photo. Well, I can loan you mine because I can remember what I'm talking about, I think. You've got the area there where I think you're talking about, where you have all the open area.
Yes.
Then you also have a segment closer to Abernathy Creek that doesn't have openings, but it's this facade you're working with. Does it take everything from those open buildings all the way to the end of the building?
I'm not sure I follow. Does it?
Yeah.
I think it's just roll-up doors, is it?
It's just a small portion, or not.
Right.
It's
Is
not
that
too
what I understand?
So it's not all
Can you
the
turn
open-
It's
that
not
around?
the entire opening. He's hoping to do phase 2, which would fill the rest of that opening
Okay.
in the near future.
Yeah. I can understand where the planning commission is coming from, because if you look at that building and the add-ons, and of course it happened, I'm sure, with code that existed at the time, that if there was code that existed at the time when that was built out, you've got a structure that actually extends over the bank of a creek and so forth, and that would be concern of mine. But it does appear that you're not making an investment of that segment of a building, which at one point I would hope is redesigned,
yes.
part of it removed, landscaped on the one side, but none of that, I guess, applies to this particular.
Not to this particular one. That's
That's
correct.
probably why the planning commission let it go forward, but probably having similar concerns to the one that I had. The other thing is that in terms of the larger future, and I don't know what the larger future for this building is, our zoning permits in that area permits lots of things, including residential on higher floors if you could do it, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So, so I think there are a lot of opportunities to you as an owner in terms of the redevelopment of that particular site, but since it's not it's not going all the way across there, I guess I don't have that much concern.
Commissioner Norris.
I guess I do have questions about the staff concerns. In its current state, this building is not eligible for listing in the National Register, which we don't require, but these changes do not help a long-term move to rehabilitate the building, is the piece I'm dealing with. So if this building is sold, and someone wants to fix it up to be eligible, then all this perhaps has to be redone. And so I think that's the it's kind of what I'm struggling with. We don't require a master plan for all of it, but that is a gateway building. It's right there along the creek. It impacts the creek. It's visually and physically. So I'm a little nervous about not having an overall site development plan.
Okay, and
Can-
can I respond
Sure.
to that just really quickly? I would say this has been in process with the owner for quite some time, and we've met with him, and we've met informally with city planners and with plans examiners to kind of go over a master plan. Nothing official was ever submitted, so I don't know if that's an official process that we have to go through with the city and get approval for. But if that's the case, then that's something we can look into. But people at the city are aware of what's going to happen long term. Now I'm kind of wishing I'd included that with the submittal.
Commissioner Shaw, did you?
Did you wish to share a little bit more about that?
Urban Renewal Commission have much to do with the master plan of the building. And I guess number two, Commissioner Norris mentioned about the ability to bring this back to a historic condition. I think it'd be fairly easy to put up some wire and some 2x4s again and take those doors down.
I'm not sure you'd be pleased.
But having done I did an as-built drawing for this building years ago, and I think this is still very air-conditioned, even with the
Yes.
doors going on.
Yes,
So,
indeed.
Yes. I mean, I got to commend somebody for doing this to improve the front of this building, knowing what the inside of that building still is.
Yeah,
so.
he's got a lot of work ahead of him, that's for sure.
Commissioner Smith.
I've been kind of struggling with all the same topics, and I've got one more to throw in. But again, any effort to make this building look better would be appreciated, I think. So what I'm grappling with is in your comments talking about the motivation for this. It was very much about purpose and protection and other reasons more so than improving the storefront. And so what I'm grappling with is I'm reading this line from our requirements, and it says ineligible improvements, items related to business operations, inventory, business equipment, etc. And really we're buying garage doors for a car usage. So to me, it kind of almost fits a business operations usage more so than a storefront improvement. But it's a fine line.
Yeah, I think.
So I'm struggling with that component, and I don't really know, because then I agree that just the doors along there alone are going to make great improvements to making that building look better. But
Okay.
so I don't know. Maybe people can comment on that. That's one I'm having problem with.
Commissioner Crocker, did you have your?
Well, yeah, I'm struggling with the same thing because this is a storefront improvement program. We've made some, we've given some grants to some projects that, in hindsight, I look back and I don't know that it really made that much of a difference in regards to the look and feel of our Main Street core. And I look back and I think building owners see the grant as a way to get rid of some dry rot, but they still paint it the same color and they're using vinyl windows. Is that in the spirit of this grant program? And I don't. It's something I struggle with, and I don't know if. I wish that darn design committee at Main Street Oregon City would get some helpful guidelines to us. So
Who was the chair of that committee?
yeah, I know. Because this is tough because it does kind of improve the streetscape of it, but it doesn't really go the whole way. I mean, it's not. I think the spirit of what we're trying to do here is really dig deep and renovate and rejuvenate, and not just put lipstick on pigs. And I'm not saying that this is putting lipstick on pigs. Don't get me wrong. Or helping people do deferred maintenance. And I think some of the projects that we have approved, that's what it has done. And so I don't know the answer to this. I'm just really struggling. And I agree. Commissioner Nocita has brought up the point that he struggles with. What are we weighing our decisions against? And this is definitely a fuzzy one. There's other fuzzy ones as well. So I don't know.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Nocita.
I think on this one, in absence of any of those guidelines, I think I do find the reasoning of staff persuasive, and I do recognize the value of this building. And I think if there were a larger master plan submitted on the building that gives some context to what we're approving, I could support it. But I think this is, in fact, kind of incremental, and I think it's best that we either defer voting on this, or I just vote no and then let them come back, to provide us with some context on it.
Any other comments or questions? What do we want to do? Do we have a motion?
I move to deny.
To deny? Do we have we have a motion to deny and a second. We have any other discussion? I would hope that in the intent of this, because this is a gateway building, I would hope that we're looking for the master plan with the idea of eventually trying to work to do something that's positive to that end of town. It's a big gateway right there. So anyway, that's just my comment.
Chair Slack? Just to that,
Mr.
that and something you may want to factor into this is, and this goes back now maybe a year or more, that I think either it was the architect or the owner, I think it's the architect, because the owner was interested in doing something with the building. He actually inquired about the prospective development that may take place on that end, and really they wanted to hold off on doing any type of master planning of that building until they really knew what the development pattern in that area was. And so I think this is probably some type of interim step just to accomplish things they're talking about. They do have intention of doing that, but until they know what else is developing down there, it's a, they want to make sure they blend with everything else that takes place.
Okay, well, I did, but unless I was reading between the lines, I got some feeling that there is something on paper
There is
that
something on paper.
and maybe I think maybe that's what, even if that's a draft or a conceptual for this point in time, maybe that's what I'm hearing we all want to see as to kind of what the overall ideas are there.
So if we were to come back at the next meeting with that already submitted in addition.
I'm hearing like that would be a positive. So nothing's for sure until we vote. But
well, I was going to say I'm willing to withdraw the motion if the intent is to come back to this, because I'll go ahead and withdraw the motion to
How
get
about
an
the second?
indication.
The second doesn't matter.
Doesn't it matter? Okay. All right.
And I move to defer decision on this until we get more information about the longer-term use of the longer-term development of the building.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to defer decision on this till we have more information. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Do we need to do a... yeah, go
Commissioner
ahead.
Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Norris? Aye. Commissioner Crocker?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Chair Slack?
Aye. 9 in favor of the motion. 0 opposed. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you again.
Mr. Chairman? Just,
Patterson.
I gave Ms. Crushhour some wrong information here, and I want to correct it. I've been working on that parking study too much. That goes to J.Q. Adams. The urban renewal district actually goes up to Harrison.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I should have caught that, too.
Okay, let's...
Going for sidewalks.
excuse me. Let's go back to the 10009
Thank you.
7th Street.
Yes. I'd also just like to take one moment to thank you for making this urban renewal program possible, because it has done wonders for our neighborhood and our property values, and it's really made owning in Oregon City wonderful.
Well, I don't think we made it possible, but we administered, so we appreciate your thanks.
Thank you for your administration.
But we're excited because all through the downtown area, we're beginning to see a lot of positive change from this grant program. So
Absolutely. It was kind of a risk when we bought it. It was like, well, and it's been wonderful. So thank you. We did the math based on square footage of the buildings, and in your commission report, originally our grant number was $11,455 total, your city share being $5,727.50. That little building's 500 square feet, and it's, so that drops it down $900, so the grant would not exceed $10,555, city share being $5,277.50. That also does include some, a landscaping bid in here to plant some shrubs in the front. We've had problems with people in the bar kind of just cutting across. The yard is just, you've seen it, a disaster and dirt, and so we're thinking actually of putting a little fence up at our expense, but putting shrubs and things that might keep people from just trampling the property. So thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Neely, were you about to make a motion before they?
So actually, I'm just going to pose a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Fisher, given the method of calculation, do we ultimately restrict it so it doesn't come to more than half? That is, if the total cost was less than double the $5,277, that cost would still be shared.
Yes.
That is, it would actually. So we're approving here is a maximum grant based on the 50%
That's right.
estimate.
And then actual receipts need to be brought in before any reimbursement is done.
Yeah, so
And we
it doesn't
keep
exceed that
an eye on
amount.
that.
It can be less. Okay.
Commissioner Shaw had a question here. So
Yeah, is this, would this go in front of HRB, Historic Review Board?
Christina Gardner-Robertson has been working with us on this, and she said it's not technically their jurisdiction when it comes to painting. It would fall more under yours.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Painting isn't covered.
I would make a motion, we approve item number 4D for $5,277.50.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nazita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Crocker?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters? Aye. Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Chair Slack?
Aye. 9-0. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaw, I just also, the colors we have chosen are historical colors, and we've taken the neighborhood into consideration in that also. So,
Good luck.
muted. No purple. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we're back to item 4E, and would the applicants come forward now? And if you would identify yourself and the city you live in, please.
Okay, George Diamond, and I live in Lake Oswego.
Brandon Reynolds, I live in Lowell.
Okay. And Ms. Greshauer.
Thank you. This is, I think we're all familiar with Munoz Bakery down on Main Street, one of our favorite spots. They're actually having limited funding at this time. They're going to be approaching this project in phases. And the first phase is what they're looking for, grant matching on that, and that is cleaning the building, power washing, stucco repair, painting, repair of overhangs, and also repairing some broken windows. There's some discussion about replacing windows and replacing doors in the packet. That's not part of this particular application. They have expressed explicit desire to be historically compatible with what they do with the windows and the doors as best they can with materials that are available today. And we've had Christina review this one as well, and so there's some discussion about what kind of siding, talking about the spotlight, and the doors again. And I think you'll see from the responses that this applicant is really very interested in being historically accurate as possible. So I don't think I have any other comments on it, but perhaps the applicant does. Oh, the pictures. Thanks, Kathy.
We always get left out.
We're more important.
You get a smaller table. You get a smaller table, and you're treated like staff.
I'm very sorry, Commissioner Neely, Commissioner Peterson.
You know, for a guy who asks the first question and gets called on by the chair the first question every time, you sure complain a lot.
It comes with age.
So
Well,
the picture gives you an idea of what they have in mind.
So anyway, we bought this property, my son and I, about, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. And then Brandon is going to do the contracting for us. So I brought him here in case he had any specific questions. But we're excited about fixing the building up. We really would like to spend more money on it down the road. So hopefully in a couple of years we'll come back and redo the windows. But right now we want to get the building so it starts looking good. And I think this color is an historic color we picked. And then in the back, which is kind of interesting, I don't have a photo of that, but there's a little garden area. And someday we kind of visualize, well, people can go out there and sit. And instead of changing all the siding's character, we decided to leave the siding the way it is, because there's three different sidings there. There's a stucco, there's a tongue and groove, and then there's T111, which, T111 is not the greatest. But it's kind of interesting, though, the three different sidings, the textures. So we're going to pull that out and just leave and then replace it with good siding, because all the siding's rotted pretty much. And so, and then we're going to pull out some of the doors in the back and fix that up. Try to keep the windows that's where Brandon will come in. There'll be a lot of carpentry work. It's hard to put a price on it because there's a lot of labor involved, where you tear those windows out, but restore it back into the same look. And then in the front, there's that belly board on top, and it's kind of hard to figure that out because there's some issues there. But Brandon,
You fascia, so replacing it, it's rotten underneath, and you have to repair the structure before they order it around. So we'll know until we open it up.
yeah, so we'll probably pull that out and redo it. But anyway, we're excited about it, and hopefully we could just improve.
Commissioner Nocita.
Thank you for coming before us. This is a very, very interesting application to me, and I'll tell you what my dilemma is on it. I've learned some of the history of this particular building, and it's one of the most fascinating buildings downtown. It actually, when it was originally constructed, it had a dance floor up on the second floor, and from what I understand, there are still, wood planks of the dance floor, but shortly after it was built, there was a fire, destroyed the roof. I'm told, although I don't know, maybe Ms. Maury can let us know about this, but this building apparently had originally a very ornate Italianate facade on it. That's what I understand. The purpose of this grant program, to me, if you really wanted to take the soul of what I think the grant program should be about, is to restore something like this building and its specialness to its historic state, or something. I mean, I don't know. I used to live in Ann Arbor, and we had a couple of buildings in Ann Arbor that had those cheese grater facades. One developer did something amazing to me. It was like a department store. It was called Klein's, and the Klein's sign was over the cheese grater. The developer removed the cheese grater, and what was revealed underneath that was just blew the whole town away. It was just the most amazing renovation. I don't know if something like that is underneath this stucco, but there may be. I don't know. If you've tested it, if you've taken a look at
some
historical.
old photos, and I didn't see the ornate type of stuff you were talking about. It was actually, I think it might have been wood at one time on top. But I know what you're talking about, and I would love to do that too. But when that caught on fire, I'm not sure. I think the building obviously was taller at one time, and there's no.
The roof is definitely
floor.
shorter than it was originally.
The second floor is, you can barely walk in it. But I think if we do this right, it's going to, where that belly band is, we could maybe do something different character there. But at the same time, it didn't have all those little ornate types of historic type of things. And as far as I know from looking at those photos.
Yeah. Well, to the I mean, I'm favorably disposed to the application to the extent that it does assist in the preservation of the building as a whole, to the point where sometime in the future, when property values have risen sufficiently, I mean, my druthers would be to have it on, the whole downtown on the National Historic Register to get the 20% tax credit for everything. So I'm favorably disposed to do this as, allowing that possibility in the future.
Yeah.
I would be interested in, irrespective of whether we, how we treat this application tonight, I think it'd be really nifty to if you could share, what original photos you do have of the building. That would be interesting. So, having said that, I think I am favorably disposed to this application because, given what it is, and we all accept that what the purpose of the application is, I think it's a very significant improvement.
Great. Oh, one thing too, we are going to get rid of that air conditioner. We didn't Photoshop it out. That is going to go away. Well, to kind of answer your question, what we want to do is what I want to do, but there's just not enough money to do it, and the rents don't support it. But those transient windows that are there, right now they're just painted. I want to come back in a year and a half, and take all those windows out and replace them with the glass so you can see back through them, and that will create a lot more character. And then get rid of all those windows that are in the front. But we're talking probably another $15,000. $20,000 to do the windows the right way. And so right now we're trying to, like you said, preserve the building, enhance it, and then come back and give it one more shot.
That transom window is a real exciting thing for me. I'm anxious for the time when we're going to see those windows again. So, Commissioner Smith.
I actually spent about 20 minutes down there today, and because my main concern was visibility from the back, but I think in our criteria it talks about views from the street and sidewalks, but I think one crucial component should be added to that, and that is view from the elevator.
Yeah.
Because you don't see it. I mean, you don't see it on the street. You don't see it, but boy, do you see it from above. And so. The back part of the building, and this photograph or this mock-up here, it just looks really nice compared to what I saw down there this morning. I mean, it's another one of those amazing buildings that's just been lost. And I think when it's referring to the lights in here, that these lights are not really accurate. I mean, that they're going to be more.
They're going to be more.
They're going to probably come out like that, but they'll be more historic in terms of going down. Right.
Yeah.
Commissioner Shaw.
So I think it's great.
I was wondering when this was going to get brought up, because I know we did a application about a project that would actually only be viewed from somebody walking across the bridge. And I thought right then, I said, oh my gosh, now the next one's going to be somebody going to see it from the elevator. And the next one, somebody's going to see it from walking down Singer Hill, looking at the back of the building. So this
from the satellite.
And if you're driving down McLaughlin Boulevard, now that we've improved all that, we're going to see the back of these buildings. So I think we've got a little Pandora's box in here. But anyway, I really like the project, and I know that what you do to it now is not really going to deter you from doing the windows. I'd hate to see you do all this work and then have to do something to the windows that would preclude all this stuff you're going to do. Yeah. So actually doing the windows is not going to interfere with what you're going to do here now.
Correct.
Any other questions? Comments? We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve a grant in the amount of we're only granting 9,000, correct? Of $9,538.75 to the Stevens Howell Building LLC to restore the exterior of the building located at 616 Main Street.
Second.
Second, and we have a motion and a second. You have
Just one question.
question? for Mr.
And this is
Crocker?
mainly for Nancy, I think. Are there rules in place about the actual building owner being the contractor and being able to pay for that? I know we've run into that issue in the past before.
Yeah, I think no, as long as it's the lowest of the bids, it's considered.
okay?
Yes, right.
Okay.
And we do still ask for receipts, and it's not like it's just a.
So for like labor, they
But
can
they
just-
can't do like in-kind labor. Kathy, you want to? Kathy administers those things, and you want to add to that?
Well,
You need a microphone.
We don't allow in-kind labor.
Right.
But,
Mike.
we actually talked about this, and we don't allow in-kind labor. But what he's doing is, I believe that you're going to be hiring people, and he's going to be providing us with receipts for payment. And so, like it could be a temporary agency or something like that. And so we're not going to be reimbursing him for any of their labor. It's all going to be outside labor.
Okay.
Yeah, well, let me clarify. I'm not charging anything as a contractor. And when we had a bid, there was always a contractor fee, but I will be paying Brandon. I mean, that's what he does. He's a carpenter. That's why I brought him here. I wanted, then we'll be hiring the electricians and stuff like that and buying the materials. But we won't. There's no contractor's fee, zero.
Does Brandon own part of the building?
No,
Okay.
but he's a contractor. I thought, just in case you had
Yeah, that doesn't matter
questions.
then.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? We do have a motion and a second. We ready to vote?
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Crocker?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters? Aye. Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Chair Slack?
Aye. Motion passes 9-0. Thank you.
And again, I'd like to thank you for undertaking this effort.
Well, we're excited. Can't wait. Thanks.
Just don't lose the recipe.
Oh, so we have item 4G, Urban Renewal Storefront Improvement Program. Is it reconsideration of 603 6th Street, Stevens Crawford Heritage House? Ms. Kushauer?
Yes, this is just to verify that the commission is still supportive of this grant, because the work that was done is slightly different from what was applied for. Originally, brick pavers were going to be used in front of the Stevens Crawford house, and ultimately, concrete sidewalk was installed. We had Christina Robertson Gardner go take a look at it from her perspective, from the historic side of it, and she thought it looked great the way it is. The other thing that I have gotten some information from David Porter from the Clackamas Heritage Partners is that, as you may recall, that the original grant application came in for greater than $10,000, and it is the commission's discretion to award more than $10,000, and the commission chose not to. So that was based on a cost estimate for the sidewalk with the pavers. In realizing that they couldn't do that whole project at the time, then he went back and talked to his architect and asked him to cut a certain amount out of the project so they could do it for under the $10,000 grant, or the total of $19,460. And so they did cut that. And at that time, too, they had their architect, Todd Iceland, I believe he was the architect, look at it, too. And he does historic architecture in Oregon City. And they all concurred that concrete would be okay. But because it is different from what was originally applied for before we delivered the funds, we wanted to make sure that it was still okay with the commission. And David Porter is here in case you have questions, as is Patty Brown.
Okay, do we have any questions? Commissioner Nocita?
I don't have a question, but I do have to oppose this. If there was going to be a change, it should have come before the commission prior to the change, and it we should have been asked for approval of the change. I don't support this.
Commissioner Smith.
So it says it sounds like staff is supporting this. In all emails from staff, they were unsupportive of it. So I'm wondering what changed staff's opinion on this.
I'm not sure what emails.
Well, there was an email from the city manager saying that this probably wasn't going to happen. There's an email from Kathy on the 25th saying, as for the sidewalk at the Stevens Crawford House, I drove by there today, and it is concrete. While I think it looks fairly good, I will not reimburse them for this portion of the work because pavers were specified unless I hear directly from the city manager. So something changed. And so I'm asking what changed.
I don't know that anything changed. The issue was, as kind of indicated there, is this was a change from what was approved, and I think what my email indicates that would not be approved from a staff position. That would have to come back to the Urban Renewal Commission for them to approve that change. In the meantime, we did have Christina look at that. She felt that met what we're trying to accomplish, and that's kind of where we're at this evening.
Yeah, as a matter of comment on that, to me, I think that's what we want staff to do, rather than making decisions on their own, to come back if they've got questions on elements of what we've approved, and it sounds like that's what staff did. Go ahead, Commissioner Smith.
Okay, so here, and the ironic thing is they did exactly what I wanted them to do. Which is unbelievable, but I still can't support it, and here's why. We're first of all, the original request didn't meet our criteria involving sidewalks, so I voted against the original request because it didn't fit our criteria. This commission chose to not follow our criteria and grant this proposal. So the proposal starts work, and the project starts, and at some point in time, in order to cut costs, a change was made. And I don't understand then why that wasn't brought back to us before the project was done. So the project was modified without our approval or any communication, at least that we know of. And now we're being asked to approve an ineligible project that was already completed that we didn't have really any oversight on. On top of that, so I think it sets a bad precedent for even if the outcome is better than it may have anticipated, we're setting up the future of anybody that comes up with a grant can change it, can cut costs or whatever, and then come back to us and say, oh, well, where's our money to reimburse us? And I don't think we should be doing that. There should be some sort of process so that grant person can come, that grant entity can come back to us and say, it's going to cost too much to do pavers. Can we change it to sidewalks? And then we say, or to pavement, and then we all say yes. But that didn't happen. So I'm concerned by that. The other thing is the citizens of this city have been quite vocal about other decisions that this body has made to businesses and organizations that are completely financially unstable. And we donated, or we approved, this commission approved a grant for Black Point, which they'll probably never live down, and because they closed shortly after. And when we have an organization here that is obviously having financial difficulties that may not even be open through the rest of this next month. And I understand that the sidewalk issue was something that needs to be fixed, but again, that wasn't part of the criteria. So I really think that we're making a poor decision and opening a lot of real interesting questions from the community if we support this. And so I really encourage this commission to consider what you're doing because this really looks bad.
Mr. Porter, do you have something to say?
Yes, Chair Slack. So let me go back just a little bit. Some other contextual things. One of them is that the city's code compliance office was really saying we must get those sidewalk repairs made quickly because it had been so long. Our original application for the urban renewal grant, if you recall, was last October, and then for a variety of reasons, it wasn't on the agenda. So we were under quite a bit of pressure to move quickly. I have to admit that I didn't know that a change of that sort would have to come back to the Urban Renewal Commission. What the contractor gave us we actually asked all of our contractors to give us a revised proposal to meet the budget that we actually knew we would have after the Urban Renewal Commission's approval. And so only one of the contractors came back at that price. And his statement at the time was that the change out in order to meet that price would have to be to take pavers out and put the concrete in. So my stipulation to him was, well, you have to go to the city and get permits and go through the city's approval process, which he did. They pulled permits and they talked to the same city staff. So I believe that if at that time there needed to be a further review, the contractor would have come back to me and said, hey, we need to do this. He also did talk to Todd Iceland, who had done the original design. So to the best of my knowledge, we were meeting the city's criteria for going through a construction project and carrying it out within budget, and the actual reimbursement request ends up being less than the full grant amount you allowed because we didn't have a match greater than that less than $10,000 amount.
Mr. Chairman, there's a couple of things you may wish to consider. Just going back to the comments, first of all, if you recall the criteria that the Urban Renewal Commission has, there is a section there that you can waive in that criteria. That's really up to your discussion when you make those decisions. There is a process, and I understand the concern about a change in that. But again, from a staff perspective, once these grants are awarded, we don't monitor the projects. We do that basically when the reimbursement request comes in. So if anyone makes a change versus what was requested, it is really a third risk of whether they'll get reimbursed. And as we've done in this case, this comes back before you, so you have the choice whether you wish to continue to honor the grant or whether you will wish to deny that. So in terms of precedent, I don't know that sets a precedent because it still gives you the authority if there's a change made. You don't have to go with what was originally approved if you choose not to.
Commissioner Smith.
The city manager referred to the Urban Renewal Commission may waive any requirement or condition on an application. Well, the application was turned in. This is after that fact. This is way after the fact. So I don't really think that applies. And it also says Urban Renewal Commission reserves the right to withdraw any grants at any time for any reason. And this is the time.
Any other questions? Commissioner Nacita.
If there are no other comments or questions, I'll move to deny item 4G.
Second.
We have a motion to deny in a second. We have any discussion? I think we need to vote on this.
Ms. Jacobs wants to speak.
Go ahead.
I wanted to comment on some of the items here that were brought up. It was stated here that we would be closing in the middle of next month as well. That is not so. The Stevens Crawford House is doing its best to stay open through the 31st. The volunteers are paying for the landscaping part that will happen in front of that sidewalk out of our pocket. And I think that what you've done here, a public slapping of the hands of the Clackamas Heritage Partners, is adequate to satisfy the community of the change that took place here. I think it's wrong for you to put us, the volunteers, there are 15 people who work at that house on a weekly basis. We do all the cleaning, all the yard work, and everything associated with that house. And I think it's wrong of you to put us out of business for this slight. And I think you've had your pound of flesh.
Okay. Commissioner Smith.
I do not at all undermine any of the efforts made by any of the volunteers at the house. They do an incredible job, absolutely 100%. That is not the issue. We have a process and a criteria that we need to follow as a commission. We have not followed it in the past, and I don't understand why that is. I think it is very important. The process is very, very important. And I don't in any way think that my decision tonight slaps the volunteers in the face or shuts that building down. I do, however, think it was a slap in the face to continue on a project that was approved and not come to us to tell us that that change was being made.
Okay, I think we've covered this subject. Have we got any other comments or questions? We're ready for a vote. And the vote is to deny the request for the funds.
So a denial, you want to vote yes?
Yes. You vote yes for approving the denial.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
No.
Commissioner Norris?
No.
Commissioner Crocker?
No.
Commissioner Shaw?
No.
Commissioner Walters?
No.
Commissioner Peterson?
No.
Chair Slack?
No. So the motion 7-2 for against. So yeah, it does not pass. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the grant for the change.
Okay. You want to read the move to authorize the reimbursement?
Where is it? Move to reauthorize the reimbursement of $8,329 to Backless Heritage Partners for the installation of a concrete sidewalk as part of their grant application.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. We have discussion on this motion.
Commissioner Smith?
No.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner Neely?
Yes.
Commissioner Norris?
Yes.
Commissioner Crocker?
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Walters?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Chair Slack?
Yes. Motion passes 7-2. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
We have now city manager's report. One thing I wanted to, at some or another, the last meeting, we did have a discussion on the types of approval process for funding of urban renewal bonds in other cities. And I think that we need a report on that either tonight or the next meeting.
Maybe next meeting. I've sent you emails both from a couple of different places. I'll be glad to put that in a formal report and get
Well,
it to you.
it was obviously a public thing. I think we need
We can
the
follow up
response.
with
So, anything else we have for this evening? If not, Commissioner Nocita.
Quick question for the city manager. In May, at our Urban Renewal Commission retreat, we voted, I think unanimously, to direct staff and Mr. Leland to commence the next level of refinement of planning for downtown and the North Main corridor. And I'm wondering what the status of that project is.
He has provided a draft report on that. I have not had a chance to sit down with him and just review that, but I think I don't think there's a lot of surprises. I think it's pretty similar to what the Main Street program is talking about. Be glad for him to come forward maybe next meeting, since we'll be here, and just kind of give you an update on what he has there.
Could I request that you forward me a copy of that
Sure.
report? Thank you.
Did you have your hand?
Yes.
Commissioner Crocker?
Along with that, I'd like to see if it'd be possible if Main Street and any other interested parties could meet with Mr. Leland.
We did that.
Talk about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, and talk about his.
Yeah, we did have a walk around with him before he did his thing. So.
Commissioner Nocita and Smith and myself and anybody else
Sure.
interested in it.
Perhaps if we could have him meet with the Main Street Board at your next meeting, if he's available. I'll see what his
Okay.
schedule is.
That'd be fantastic.
Anything else this evening? Because I thought we'd be done early, but we're pushing the city commission meeting. We're adjourned.